Hello, welcome everyone to our monthly product webinar. And I'm really excited that this month because we have a really special guest. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Um, Today we're going to talk about we have our partner from Samba Safety, and we're going to talk about uh, our product that we have um, introduced this month. First of all, crashes are not random. They follow predictable patterns. The challenge is having the right data to see the risk before any incident happens. So in this webinar, what we're going to do is we're going to show you how combining telematics data intelligence with continuous MVR monitoring will give your fleets a complete view of the big three crash predictors, which are speeding, distracted driving, and invalid licenses. And this framework is proven for us to turn that data into crash prevention. So to jump off, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker. Our speaker today is Jim Angel. Why don't you go ahead? Really happy to have you, Jim. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your telematics background, and your work with Samba Safety?
Yeah, thanks, Megan, and good morning or possibly afternoon, I guess, if you're east of us. But yeah, happy to be here. I've just had the really good fortune to be in the industry for a long time. 23 years of
Mhm.
that was spent on the operating side of the business. So I have been in and filled some of the same shoes that all of you are in, and had the opportunity to utilize telematics with my last fleet, and really glean a lot of the data that can help you
Mhm.
make better operating decisions, particularly in and around safety. Um, Today, my role at Samba Safety as a telematics safety advisor is to help fleets and insurers get the most out of the data that's available. And we'll show that today, as Megan pointed out, with the amounts of data that you can pull in to get a better, well-rounded picture of areas of risk to focus on really gives you the opportunity to be, kind of in full control of what you're trying to achieve as far as your safety goals. It's often been my experience that you get a new technology and you want to use it across the entire fleet. And sometimes you get overwhelmed by the amount of data that you have. And what we're going to try to show you today, and what I want to try to bring forward, is that by targeting that top 10 to 20% of the folks in your operation, that the data leads you and points you to not only who that is, but what they need and have the opportunity to work on, is really the largest opportunity you have to reduce risk. So I'm going to try to bring in a lot of some of the real world experience that I've had the opportunity to have, and I hope you enjoy the time that we're spending today.
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and jump in, Jim. We hear a lot about crash costs rising. So can you set the stage? What is really at stake for fleets today?
Yeah, so that's where it's really gotten crazy. Even in the last decade, when you look at, between the cost of insurance rising double digits every year, you look at the total crash cost. Recently, Nets published that is about 72 billion annually. To give a little perspective, I did a little math this morning, and if you take a look at that amount of money and you divided that, let's say that we all had to pay an accident tax on that. For every taxpayer in the U.S., it would cost us about $1,100 to participate in that. And the reason I bring that up is that when those claims are paid by insurance companies, it does affect all of us. It's not just the policy holder of that particular fleet, but that gets spread across the entire book of business by an insurance company. So when you talk about our inflation, you talk about repair cost in particular, and to get to that number, a lot of times you just look at the claim itself, but you bring in all the other implications of the time that it takes, the days you lose, the legal fees that you have, and even reputational damage to a fleet. When you bring all of those into play, you can see how quickly that number can get up. Part of that number, unfortunately, is also, and I know this is a term that everybody's thrilled to hear about in transportation, and that's of nuclear verdicts. That continues to go up. Uh, you know, uh, Over the last decade, those have gone from basically being 2.5 to 5 million to all the way up to six-figure 100 million claims now. So it's just crazy. The average now is reported to be about $23.8 million, and with some of the top verdicts being upwards of 214 million, up to and including the $1 billion settlement, or at least judgment, that was made in Florida. I think that was probably about a year and a half ago now, against the two Canadian carriers that basically drove straight through all the way from Canada and caused a catastrophic accident down in Florida. So it's just crazy of what your companies are having to deal with. But the good thing is that there's a level of management that you can provide yourself by using telematics and driver MVR history that gives you the best picture into being able to control some of that. So when you talk about what I brought up earlier, being able to focus on that 10%
Mm-hmm.
of your drivers and how that relates to the larger amount of exposure across the fleet, that's where you absolutely can gain operational efficiency by not worrying about talking to everyone. And it's much different, right? If you're a 20 truck operation, which we have, 80% of our fleets are 25 trucks and less, they're a huge and important component to our industry. Well, you probably have personal relationships with those individuals and you probably can reach out to those folks. But when you talk about some of the larger enterprise carriers and you've got one or two safety personnel that are responsible to that, they have to be operationally efficient. So allowing the data to point them to the individuals that they should talk to and then what they should talk to them about really gives you the opportunity to focus on reducing that 40% exposure and actually changing the behavior of those drivers to a level that brings them more into the fold and overall produces better results for your entire fleet.
Mm-hmm. All right. I mean, it's really compelling data. Can you talk about how crashes can be predictable, and what does Samba Safety data tell us about these leading indicators?
Yeah, so when you talk to a lot of insurers, and I think we in the industry also absolutely recognize this, is that you've got three top contributors. And once again, you get all this amazing technology that provides all of this AI produced information in regards to events. You've got in-cab events and things like that. Well, I can tell you very, very succinctly that if you focus on speeding, you will control an enormous amount of safety events within your organization because they also make everything else worse. If you think about lane departure, hard turn, harsh braking, all of those are associated with speeding over posted speed limit. So as you see in the slide, 47% increases the crash likelihood. That's a substantial amount. That's almost 1.5 times the likelihood of speeding when your drivers are speeding over. So the ability to focus on that and really see patterns of repetitive behavior and control that really have a major impact. In addition to that, insurers are really starting to bring a lot of attention to distracted driving. And, I think we can all admit that at times we've been guilty of doing things with our phone that we shouldn't have. Obviously, it could be worse with a commercial truck driver, for example. For that matter, even mid and light, anything that's 2.5 tons and over will have a more severe impact in a crash than just a regular automobile. So when you think about the chances of that happening and the adding speeding to that, it really becomes and could become a deadly combination. Insurers are trying to take a lot of steps. There's several of them that have, apps that you can, even from just a consumer level, that you can put on your phone that basically make your phone relatively inoperable besides emergency and GPS so that you're not doing that temptation. But I think it'll be a long time coming before we ever take that freedom away that's been so well established in our society of being able to use their phones. Interesting statistic that when you see that about a third of employees have it actually admitted to utilizing their phone in a situation in which they shouldn't, pretty well tells you that there's opportunity for exposure. And then last but not least is making sure that one, the type of driver that you're hiring from an MVR history. And that's, by the way, is motor vehicle record. So it's for all of us, that's where we've received any type of ticket or things like that. And depending on the outcome of that, it gets applied to our record and it stays there for a period of time, right? So
Mm-hmm.
our statistics have shown that an invalid license or a suspended license makes a driver 4 times more likely to be involved in a fatal crash. So, and one of those licenses has we've seen to be involved in 17% of fatal accidents. Now, some of the other things that you often think of is that, well, I pull MVRs every year. Well, a lot can happen in between the time that when you pull that and when you look at it again. And for those that are even doing it twice a year, when you think about a 6 month period of time, something may have happened on a personal level to that individual or that driver, and that you don't know about that does affect the risk and exposure of your company. About 2.5, 3 months after I joined Samba Safety, we were talking to a customer that recently moved from pulling their annual MVR to monitoring it on a regular basis, on a daily basis. And that, of course, you don't get a new MVR every day, but you're notified if an MVR has changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they shared an example of why they moved to that, and that was they found out that one of their drivers has recently had their license suspended and had been in their truck for 3 months for failure to pay child support. Well, if you think about it, employees probably not going to walk in and say, hey, guess what happened? Because they know it's probably going to affect their job. Well, think about the exposure that that company had now for 3 months, and they never even knew it. So when you take a look at the telematics advantage that Azuga can provide you with speeding and all the event reporting and the harsh braking and all the things that go along with that, and you think about that consistent monitoring on an MVR, it really gives you a well-rounded picture of not only what's going on with that driver while they're in your company asset, but what may also be going on as more of a behavioral or habit that they may have that you do need to know about, because that exposure can transfer to the company name. So lots of things to think about there, but bringing those two data together really gives you an opportunity to take control of what you're trying to focus on.
Mm-hmm. So walk us through the 4 steps of preventability. So what does a proactive program like this actually look like in practice?
So easy to identify right there on the slides. You first of all have to identify the risk. And that goes exactly what I was talking about earlier, is that you're getting near real-time incident reporting while that driver's driving the company vehicle. So you're hearing about his or her speeding, harsh braking, hard turns. Camera data is part of this as well. So if you have video, you're able to look at those. You're able to coach those drivers on, and that is that continuing monitoring activity, right? So not only you're monitoring telematics, but if you're taking a look at when something may have happened to that MVR, either on a commercial or personal level. And by the way, this would include the ability to see DOT violations that might have been acquired during an inspection on heavy trucks. And I'm sure a lot of you are using CSA data as well. That is another area of data that you can pull in, but generally those are going to get reported on a driver's MVR if they have to do with driving behavior. You're not going to see a vehicle violation as it regards to maintenance on their MVR, but you will see anything regarding that driver's behavior if they got pulled over for dangerous driving or anything along that line. So when you start looking at identifying and then monitoring, that's going to bring you to that 10 to 20% tier that you want to focus on, right? So then that's when this intervene and improve behavior comes in. So using the right tools, and in particular, we at Samba, we use a AI tool that looks at those violations, whether it be on MVR or incidents created by the Azuga telematics, and we direct your managers to the training modules that should be used to teach and retrain that behavior. And so all you find yourself doing is, hey, I want to add two more to these. You click the box
Hmm.
and look sent out to the driver for them to view and actually master that training, answer a few questions, and then that becomes documented as part of what you've done to coach and change the behavior of that driver. So then you get up to the last but not least is that document and scale, right? So you'll find that as you start to focus on that 10 to 20%, your median average will change across your fleet. It will improve across your entire fleet. So then you start looking at improvements overall, your trend analysis on how you're moving in a direction. And let's say,
Hmm.
for example, you set a goal to reduce speeding events by 10%, and you're able to measure that across your fleet. Say you have another goal of I'm trying to reduce my events per 100,000 miles to 0.05, for example. Pulling in that data and monitoring that, and once again, just following this circle of four steps really gives you the opportunity to look
Hmm.
overall and produce those results not only internally but externally, right? So you're able to utilize that information. Insurance renewal, when that comes up, you're able to go to your insurer and say, hey, I'd like you to see what we've done over the last year. We've really been focused on this. We're using all our tools that we invested in. We're using our telematics. We're monitoring our MBRs. We've got a training program in place. It really makes a difference in how a insurance broker, underwriter, agent, whoever that is, that they take a look at your fleet to give you the largest advantages possible in possible policy reduction, or more importantly, hopefully you don't get an increase.
Right. So what kind of results would Azuga's customers expect when they add this continuing monitoring and training to their telematics program?
So great question, Megan. And this obviously for anybody on the call, this has a lot to do with return on the investment you make, right? So
Hmm.
um, we, on an annual basis, we put out through our telematics partners, we put out a annual driver risk report, and we also issue a annual telematics report. And what it enables us to do is gather a ton of data from our partners like
Hmm.
Azuga and their customers and their drivers, and we actually get to monitor and see the difference.
Okay.
Very quickly, when you move into that monitoring stage, so when you're actually paying attention to your telematics and your MBR monitoring, generally see a 26 to 34% improvement in reduction of violations. What's really
Hmm.
cool is when you add training to that, so that you're actually giving a correctional lesson to the areas needed for improvement, that jumps to 77% reduction in violations. And then statistically, when we compare that program to then claims, we see about a 17 to 20% reduction in overall claims. And I'm really cautious when I throw that out there. That may not
Hmm.
necessarily mean a reduction
Right.
of collisions, but it generally means a reduction in claims dollars. Because two things happen. You do improve your accident frequency, that should go down.
Hmm.
But more importantly, the severity of the collisions that you may be involved in should also lower those claims dollars because your drivers are going posted speed. They are more aware of their type of events, for
Hmm.
example, from video and things like that. So when you see that, then you really start to see those reductions. And this is not an overnight thing. You do see reduction in the violations in 30 to 90 days. When you add training to that and you start look at that 1 year trend line, you really start to see a large impact. And the other thing that nobody, I don't think, gives as much thought to is a good program like this puts drivers in a position that shows that you care about them, and it actually helps with driver retention because you're doing you're not leading with the hammer and discipline, but you're leading with, hey, here's areas of opportunity, here's the data we can show you, this is how we know that this is happening. If a video is included, here's a great video example of maybe following a little
Hmm.
bit close here. You can actually give them nuggets of information that
Hmm.
just through driving habit over the years, they may not even know that they're doing, but by providing that to them and showing the proof of that in a respectable way, really gives you an opportunity not only to change the behavior, but it shows your employee that you care. And I think one of my biggest messages in and around any safety program is make it about your drivers. Make it about them making sure that they come home every night after their trips to their families, to their social events. When you make it about the driver, then quite honestly, the operational and the financial benefits come automatically with that.
Absolutely. So think of it as two lenses on the same driver. Azuga shows you what they're driving today. Samba Safety shows you the full risk history behind the driver, their license status, violation record, compliance signals that never show up in a telematics feed. And then together, the Azuga and Samba Safety can give you something that neither of us can deliver alone, which is a complete view of driver risk. And so both on the road and off of it, or both on the road and off of it. So what's happening behind the wheel in real time, what's regulatory and compliance record says about the driver, and that's what this partnership is built to deliver.
Yeah, great points, Megan. And we are very proud to be a partner of Azuga. We think you guys are an awesome provider, both from a partner standpoint and also from the position that you guys have out in the market and the volume that you guys represent. I think you guys do a terrific job and have always done that in the past. But yeah, I can't stress enough that the more data that you have and the more control you take over it, and it's important, make it easy to use, right? Use the tools that Azuga has provided to bring that telematics information together. Use the tools that we can provide to take, so you know when those MBR changes take place. And by the way, as an alert, right? You don't have to go in and check anything every day. It'll come in as an alert, very, very similar to way you can set the Azuga alerts to come to your desk as well. So you're on top of things that you need to deal with that are more serious and are more urgent, but then overall make your plan for the week of who you're going to talk to at the end of the week or the beginning of the next week. And it just, once you get that flow going and you start to see that trend line move downward, or upward, depending on what the goal is, it really becomes meaningful and it just becomes an easier and easier job to manage.
Excellent. We've put up a poll in the view. If you're interested in MVR monitoring within Azuga, please go ahead and click on that poll and we'll make sure somebody reaches out to you and we'll talk to you. But other than that, thank you so much for joining us today, Jim. I know that this was a lot of data, and I know it takes a lot to prepare, and I just really appreciate you joining us. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure. Appreciate the opportunity to participate.